I'm Brooke Mitchell, 27, and until last Christmas, I paid over $3,000 monthly to support my parents. Then during Christmas dinner, my father looked me straight in the eyes and called me a burden. He told me to get out of his house, the house I was paying for. What I did next shocked everyone, including myself. I didn't just leave. I systematically cut off every single financial tie. Before I share what happened next, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had to make a difficult choice for your own sanity. To understand why my father's words cut so deep that Christmas, you need to know our history. I grew up in a middle-class home in suburban Minneapolis. Dad, Robert Mitchell, worked as a sales manager for a manufacturing company, and Mom, Diane, taught part-time at the local elementary school. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Family vacations to Florida, dance lessons for me, a decent house in a good school district. Everything changed 5 years ago when Dad was laid off during company restructuring. He was 52 at the time, that awkward age where he was too experienced, expensive for most companies to hire, but too young for retirement. The severance package was decent, but Dad's pride was shattered. At first, we all believed it would be temporary. Dad had always been the primary provider, the one who handled our finances, the foundation of our family's stability. Mom's part-time teaching salary barely covered groceries. When 3 months passed with no job offers, the atmosphere at home changed. Dad started spending days on the couch, watching TV and drinking more than usual. Mom walked on eggshells around him. I had just graduated college with my marketing degree and landed my first real job at a digital agency. The timing seemed almost providential. As Dad's income disappeared, mine began. What started as helping out temporarily became a permanent arrangement. Just until I get back on my feet, Dad would say, but his job search became increasingly sporadic. He'd dismiss potential positions as beneath him or not worth the commute. Meanwhile, Mom worked herself to exhaustion, trying to increase her hours while caring for Dad's wounded ego. I moved back home initially to save money and help with bills. Gradually, I became the household's primary provider. Within a year, I was paying the monthly mortgage, $1,500. Both parents' car payments, $800. All utilities, $400. Insurance premiums, $350. Credit card minimums, $300. Streaming services, phone plans, internet, $250. That's over $3,600 monthly, more than 60% of my take-home pay. At first, I didn't mind. These were the people who raised me, who put me through college. But as months turned into years, the dynamic shifted. Dad stopped looking for work entirely. Any suggestion about job opportunities would trigger explosive arguments. "You think I haven't tried? You think I want my daughter supporting me?" he'd yell. Then slam doors and disappear for hours. Mom would always smooth things over, making excuses. "He's depressed, honey. This isn't easy for him." The entitlement grew slowly, almost imperceptibly. Dad upgraded his cable package without asking. Mom started ordering expensive organic groceries. When my car needed repairs, Dad suggested I finance a new one instead, while they continued driving the vehicles I was making payments on. Last year, I got promoted to senior marketing manager. I took everyone out to celebrate, spending nearly $300 on dinner. Dad spent the entire evening complaining about the service and questioning whether my promotion was just affirmative action for women. I cried in the restaurant bathroom while Mom waited outside, apologizing for him but never confronting him. For my 27th birthday, I planned a weekend trip with friends. Dad threw a fit about abandoning them. I canceled my plans and spent my birthday watching TV with them instead. No cake, no card. Mom whispered happy birthday when Dad wasn't in the room. As Christmas approached last year, I was reaching my breaking point. My friends were buying homes, traveling, building their futures, while I lived paycheck to paycheck supporting two capable adults. I tried talking to Mom about finding full-time work, about Dad taking any job at all, about downsizing their lifestyle. These conversations always ended the same way: tears, guilt, promises to try harder, then nothing changing. Still, I hoped the Christmas spirit might soften Dad's heart. I splurged on gifts, decorations, and food. I baked cookies using my grandmother's recipes. I strung lights around the house while Dad watched football. I thought maybe, just maybe, this holiday would bring back the loving father I remembered from childhood. I was catastrophically wrong. Christmas Eve started hopefully enough. I spent the day wrapping last-minute gifts and preparing food for the next day's feast. Mom helped intermittently, though she seemed anxious about Dad's mood. He'd been irritable all week about the commercialization of Christmas, ironic considering I was funding every aspect of our celebration. That night, I set out cookies and milk for Santa like we always had, a tradition Mom insisted we maintain even with no children in the house. Dad rolled his eyes but said nothing. Before bed, Mom hugged me tightly and whispered, "Tomorrow will be wonderful. You've made everything so beautiful." Christmas morning seemed promising. Dad actually smiled when opening the expensive watch I'd bought him, a Nixon I'd saved for specifically because he'd mentioned liking it months ago. Mom cried over the spa package and cashmere sweater I'd gifted her. For a moment, it felt like the family I remembered. Around noon, the extended family began arriving. Uncle James and Aunt Patricia, Dad's brother and sister-in-law, their grown children Lisa and Mark, and Mom's sister Catherine with her husband Paul. Everyone brought dishes and more gifts. The house filled with delicious smells and holiday music. I'd spent days cleaning and decorating, and the compliments flowed freely from our relatives. "Brooke, the house looks magazine-worthy," Aunt Patricia exclaimed. "And you made all this food yourself?" "Incredible." Dad remained in his recliner, accepting greetings, but contributing little. I noticed he'd already gone through several glasses of the expensive whiskey I'd bought for the occasion. Mom fluttered around nervously, refilling plates and glasses, her smile a bit too bright. Dinner began pleasantly around 3 p.m. 14 of us crowded around the dining table and the card table I'd set up as an extension. The food was perfect, turkey moist, gravy lump-free, sides abundant. Uncle James proposed a toast to the chef, and everyone raised their glasses to me. Dad cleared his throat. "And to the man who provided this roof over our heads for 30 years. He added pointedly. An uncomfortable silence followed. Uncle James quickly raised his glass again. "To family," he amended, and everyone murmured agreement. The conversation meandered through safe topics: Cousin Mark's new job, and Catherine's garden plans, the unseasonably warm winter. Then Aunt Patricia turned to me. "Brooke, your mother mentioned you got a big promotion this year. Tell us about it." I smiled, genuinely excited to share. "Yes, I'm now managing our agency's largest client accounts. It came with a nice raise too, which means I might finally start apartment hunting in the new year." The table fell silent. I could feel Dad's glare without looking at him. "Apartment hunting?" he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Planning to abandon ship now that you're making the big bucks?" Mom's hand flew to her necklace, a nervous habit. "Robert, Brooke just means eventually. You know she's happy helping us out." "Am I?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Dad's face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" I should have backpedaled. Should have laughed it off. But 5 years of suppressed frustration bubbled to the surface. "It means I'm 27, Dad. I love you both, but I've been paying all the bills for years now. Maybe it's time I build my own life." "Your own life," he repeated mockingly. "While we do what exactly? Become homeless? Is that what you want?" Aunt Patricia intervened. "Robert, surely you and Diane have discussed plans for..." "Plans?" Dad's voice rose. My plan was to retire at 65 after a successful career. Instead, I got tossed aside like garbage and had to rely on my daughter's charity, which she's apparently eager to revoke. Dad, that's not what I meant, I protested, feeling everyone's eyes on me. I just thought maybe we could talk about adjusting our arrangement. Maybe downsizing to something more affordable or… Oh, I see, Dad interrupted, slamming his hand on the table hard enough to make the dishes jump. We're supposed to downgrade our lives so you can upgrade yours? After everything we've sacrificed for you? The injustice of that statement left me breathless. Mom placed a restraining hand on Dad's arm. Robert, please. It's Christmas. He shook her off. No, Diane. I want to hear more about how ungrateful our daughter is. 5 years of help, which we wouldn't have needed if we hadn't spent everything putting her through college, and now she wants out. Dad. I paid for college with scholarships and loans, I said quietly. Loans I'm still paying off while also covering the mortgage. His face contorted with rage. So now we're keeping score? Tallying up who owes what? Is that how you see family, Brooke? The room was dead silent. Cousin Lisa stared at her plate. Uncle James examined his water glass with intense focus. No, I finally answered. But I don't think it's unreasonable to expect you to at least try finding work. Any work. It's been 5 years, Dad. That's when he said it, the words that would change everything. You know what? You're nothing but a burden. Always have been. Get out of my house. My ears rang. The table collectively gasped. Robert, Mom exclaimed. You don't mean that. The hell I don't. He stood, towering over the table. If we're such a disappointment, such a drain on her precious resources, she can leave. See how she likes paying for 2 households. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Uncle James cleared his throat uncomfortably. Now, Robert, let's all just take a breath here. Stay out of this, James, Dad snapped. I found my voice. Your house? The house I make monthly mortgage payments on. Oh. Here we go with the scorekeeping again, Dad sneered. Poor Brooke, such a martyr. I looked to Mom, hoping for support, for any acknowledgement of the insanity unfolding. She just shook her head slightly, eyes pleading. Your father doesn't mean it, honey. He's just upset. Let's all calm down and enjoy our dinner. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I'd been denying for years. Nothing would change. Dad would continue draining my resources and emotional energy indefinitely. Mom would continue enabling him. And I would continue sacrificing my future on the altar of family obligation unless I chose differently. I stood quietly, placed my napkin beside my plate, and walked out of the dining room without another word. Behind me, I heard Aunt Patricia's disapproving murmur and Uncle James's awkward attempt to change the subject. In my bedroom, still decorated with high school memorabilia despite my adulthood, I locked the door and slid to the floor. Hot tears streamed down my face, but beneath the hurt, something else was crystallizing. Determination. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My father's words echoed in my head on repeat. You're nothing but a burden. Always have been. Get out. The dinner had continued downstairs without me. Occasionally, I heard forced laughter, the clink of silverware, strained conversation. No one came to check on me. Not even Mom. Around midnight, the relatives departed. I heard their subdued goodbyes, car doors closing, engines starting. My parents' voices drifted upstairs, Mom's pleading tone, Dad's dismissive grunts. Their bedroom door slammed. Silence fell. By 3 a.m., I'd moved from shock to clarity. Dad had done me a favor. He'd severed the emotional cord I couldn't cut myself. When dawn broke on December 26th, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. Column by column, I documented every financial contribution I'd made over the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, $54,000. Car payments, $28. $800. Utilities, $14,400. Insurance, $12,600. Credit cards, $10,800. Miscellaneous, streaming, phones, internet, $9,000. The total made me physically ill, $129,600. Nearly $130,000, money that should have been building my future, vanished into my parents' lifestyle. And what had changed in those 3 years? Nothing. Dad was no closer to employment. Mom was no closer to increasing her hours. They hadn't downsized, economized, or modified their spending in any way. I pulled up my bank accounts next. Despite my good salary, I had less than $8,000 in savings. My retirement account was minimal. My student loans still loomed large. At 27, I was financially behind every friend I had, all because I'd been supporting 2 able-bodied adults in their 50s. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan, my closest friend since college. Hey, missed you yesterday. Merry Christmas. How was family time? I hesitated, then typed back, disaster. Dad told me to get out. Her response was immediate. What? Call me. 20 minutes later, after hearing the whole story, Megan didn't hesitate. Move in with me. Seriously. I have the spare room. Stay as long as you need. I can't impose. Brooke. She interrupted. You've been imposing on yourself for years. Let someone help you for once. After hanging up, I called my bank and spent an hour learning how to disentangle my finances from my parents. The representative sounded concerned when I explained the situation. Ms. Mitchell, are you saying you've been paying all these bills for other adults without any formal agreement? Yes, I admitted, embarrassment burning my cheeks even though she couldn't see me. I strongly recommend consulting with a financial advisor, she said. Some of these accounts may be difficult to separate, especially co-signed loans. Later that afternoon, I met with a financial advisor at the bank while my parents were still sleeping off their Christmas indulgences. Mark Jennings listened to my story without judgment, then outlined my options. The mortgage is the most straightforward, he explained. Since you're not on the loan, just the payment arrangement, you can simply stop payments. The car loans are trickier since you co-signed. You can't remove yourself without their cooperation or refinancing. He continued through each financial tie, helping me create a comprehensive exit strategy. By the end of our 2-hour meeting, I had a clear roadmap. One more thing, Mark said as I was leaving. Document everything. Every payment you've made, every bill you're currently responsible for, everything you plan to cut off. Send formal notifications. Cover yourself legally. Back at home, I researched apartment options online while my parents remained conspicuously absent. Mom had left a note on the kitchen counter, gone shopping with Dad. Leftovers in fridge. We should talk later. Talk. After allowing Dad to throw me out of the house I paid for. After failing to defend me. After 5 years of enabling Dad's entitlement. No, I decided. We wouldn't talk later. We were done talking. That evening, I called Rebecca, my former professor turned mentor, seeking perspective from someone who knew me well but had no stake in my family dynamics. You're not abandoning them, she assured me after hearing my plan. You're refusing to continue enabling destructive patterns. There's a profound difference. But what if they can't manage? What if they lose the house? Brooke, Rebecca said gently, they managed their lives before you graduated college. They're not elderly or disabled. They're choosing dependence because you've made it possible. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people we love is to stop cushioning them from the consequences of their choices. Her words fortified my resolve. Over the next day, I developed a timeline and checklist. December 28th, begin financial separation process. December 29th, pack essentials and move to Megan's. December 30th, send formal documentation to parents. January 1st, begin new life. I visited Target and bought basics for my temporary stay at Megan's toiletries. A new set of sheets, a few kitchen items. I set up mail forwarding to Megan's address. I changed my address on all personal accounts. I even ordered new checks without my parents' address. With each action, guilt and doubt tried to creep in. What about birthdays and holidays? What about family photos and keepsakes? What about mom, caught in the middle of dad's choices and my response? But then I'd remember dad's words, the collective gasp around the table, mom's silence, and my resolve would strengthen. Sometimes the most difficult choices are the only ones that lead to healing. By the evening of December 27th, everything was in place. My parents had returned from their post-Christmas shopping excursion with new purchases despite their supposed financial strain. They barely acknowledged me, operating under the assumption that my tantrum was temporary, that I'd continue being their personal ATM despite dad's cruelty. They had no idea what was coming. December 28th dawned crisp and sunny, the kind of winter day that fools you into thinking it's warmer than it actually is. I woke early, knowing my parents wouldn't rise before 9 a.m. Dad had been drinking heavily again last night, and Mom had taken a sleeping pill, their typical pattern after family conflicts. At 8:30 a.m., they surprised me by announcing they were going to the after-Christmas sales. "There's a great deal on a new TV at Best Buy," Dad said, not quite meeting my eyes. This was his version of pretending nothing had happened, making plans that required my money without addressing his outburst. "And Macy's has bedding on clearance," Mom added brightly. "Our comforter is getting so shabby." I nodded noncommittally, heart pounding. Their shopping trip was perfectly timed for my plan. "Have fun," I said, forcing a smile. The moment their car pulled away, I sprang into action. I'd already packed most of my personal belongings overnight: clothes, jewelry, important documents, sentimental items. Now I moved methodically through the house, gathering remaining essentials, my professional certifications from the office, my grandmother's recipe box from the kitchen, my childhood photo albums from the attic. I left behind furniture I'd purchased, kitchen appliances I'd bought, even the new TV I'd given them last birthday. Those items represented sunk costs in a bad investment. Taking them would only prolong my connection to this toxic dynamic. With my car packed, I moved to phase 2, financial separation. I sat at the dining room table, the scene of Christmas disaster, and began making calls. First, the mortgage company. I need to cancel the auto payment arrangement from my account. Effective immediately. The representative asked several questions, sounding concerned about potential foreclosure. I explained I wasn't on the mortgage, just the payment arrangement. They warned that the homeowners would need to establish their own payment method before the next due date to avoid late fees. Next, the utility companies: electricity, water, gas, internet. Each call followed a similar pattern. "I've been paying these bills for family members, but I need to remove myself from the accounts. Are you transferring service to someone else?" "No. The homeowners will need to establish their own payment arrangements." "Should we notify them?" "I'll be informing them myself. Please just process the removal." The streaming services were easiest: Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, simple online cancellations. The phone plan more complicated, requiring me to extract myself while leaving their lines active on a reduced plan they'd need to pay for themselves. The car loans presented the biggest challenge. As co-signer, I couldn't completely remove myself. The best I could do was contact the lenders, explain the situation, and establish that I would no longer be making payments. I provided my new contact information for any default notifications, but made it clear I wouldn't be responsible for ongoing payments. "You understand this could impact your credit if they default?" one representative warned. "I understand," I replied, accepting this as the cost of freedom. Better a temporary credit hit than a lifetime of financial servitude. For each account, I requested email confirmation of the changes and documented the representative's name, the time of call, and the outcome. By noon, I had systematically dismantled the financial infrastructure that had kept my parents' lifestyle afloat. The final step was the hardest. I sat down to write them a letter, knowing a face-to-face conversation would only devolve into manipulation and guilt. After several drafts, I produced 3 pages that explained every payment I'd made for the past 3 years, with documentation attached, which services would stop and exactly when, with account numbers, my new contact information, with the clear boundary that it was for emergencies only, my reasons for leaving, stated factually without emotional accusations. My hope that this separation would ultimately lead to healthier relationships for all of us. I ended with, I love you both, but I can no longer sacrifice my future to maintain a situation that isn't changing. Dad, you told me to get out, and after reflection, I agree that's the best course for everyone. Mom, I hope you'll understand this isn't about abandoning you, but about establishing necessary boundaries. I'm not disappearing from your lives, but our relationship needs to change fundamentally. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. I placed the letter prominently on the kitchen counter, along with copies of all the financial documentation. Then I walked through the house one last time, my childhood bedroom, the backyard where Dad had pushed me on the swing, the kitchen where Mom had taught me to bake. Memories from before everything changed, when we were a real family. Tears threatened, but I blinked them away. Sentiment wouldn't serve me now. At 1:30 p.m., I locked the front door, placed my key on top of the letter, and drove away from the house I'd been financially responsible for but never allowed to call my own. I turned off my phone, knowing the barrage would begin soon, and headed to Megan's apartment, the first step in my journey toward independence. That night, curled up on Megan's pull-out couch, anxiety and relief warred within me. Megan opened a bottle of wine, and we talked for hours about everything and nothing. Around midnight, I finally turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls, 29 text messages, most from Mom, increasingly panicked. Where are you? Please come home. We can talk about this. Your father didn't mean what he said. Please call me. Dad's messages were fewer but evolved from angry. Throwing a tantrum won't solve anything, to threatening, you can't legally just stop payments. I silenced the phone without responding and slept deeply for the first time in years. The consequences of my decision unfolded like dominoes falling in slow motion. Days 1 to 2 brought the expected barrage of communications. Mom called every hour. Dad alternated between threatening legal action, baseless, as my financial advisor confirmed, and dismissing my departure as temporary. I maintained complete silence, using the time to set up my temporary living space at Megan's and begin apartment hunting. On day 3, the streaming services shut off. This triggered a new wave of texts from Mom. Netflix isn't working. Is there a problem with the account? All our shows are gone. Did you forget to pay the bill? Brooke, please call me. Nothing is working. I didn't respond, but I imagined the moment they realized this wasn't a technical glitch, but a deliberate action. The first small ripple of consequence. By day 7, their cell phone services had been reduced to the basic plan, eliminating unlimited data and international calling, which Dad inexplicably needed despite never traveling internationally. Mom's texts became increasingly desperate. Our phones are saying we're over our data limit, but that can't be right. Can you check? The phone company says you removed yourself from the account. There must be some mistake. Please call me, sweetheart. I don't understand what's happening. Dad's communication strategy shifted from anger to minimization. This little financial tantrum is very immature. Call us when you're ready to behave like an adult. The irony was breathtaking. Day 10 brought the first mortgage late notice. Mom's panic escalated. The mortgage company called. They say our payment is late, but that can't be right because you always pay it on the first. Please, Brooke, this is serious. We could lose the house. I don't understand why you're punishing me too. What did I do? That last message nearly broke my resolve. Mom was collateral damage in some ways, but her enablement had been crucial to maintaining the toxic dynamic. Still, I caught myself checking real estate listings in their area, calculating what they could afford on Mom's part-time salary. Stop, I told myself firmly. They are adults. They made choices. Now they get to make different choices. Around day 14, the utility warning notices began arriving at their house. I knew this because Uncle James called me, the first family member to reach out directly. Brooke, it's Uncle James. I'm not taking sides here, but I'm concerned. Your mom called Aunt Patricia crying about utility shut-off notices. What's going on? I explained the situation calmly, including the years of financial support and Dad's Christmas outburst. I had no idea you were paying for everything, he said, sounding genuinely shocked. The way your dad talked. He was still handling the mortgage and major bills. That hasn't been true for 3 years, I replied. Ask him to show you a single mortgage receipt with his name on it. Uncle James promised to talk to them. Later that day, Aunt Patricia called, her tone entirely different from her husband's. I always knew something wasn't right in that house. She said without preamble, your father's pride and your mother's enabling have created this mess, not you. I just want you to know I support your decision completely. Her validation released something tight in my chest. Thank you. That means a lot. Don't thank me. I should have said something years ago. The way they've taken advantage of you is shameful. The next day, my cousin Lisa texted, just so you know, your parents have been telling everyone you abandoned them without warning because of your successful new job. But Aunt Patricia set Mom straight on what really happened. We're all with you, cuz. While family drama unfolded, I focused on rebuilding my life. I found a charming one-bedroom apartment within my budget, the first place that would be truly mine. I signed the lease with a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. The security deposit took a chunk of my savings, but for once, I was spending money on my future rather than my parents' present. Work became a sanctuary. Without the constant drain of home stress, my performance improved dramatically. My boss noticed. Whatever changes you've made in your personal life, they're working. You're more focused, more creative. Keep it up. I established new routines, morning yoga, evening walks, cooking healthy meals just for me. I started therapy, unpacking the codependency patterns I'd fallen into. I joined a financial planning group for young professionals, creating my first real budget that didn't include supporting my parents. The most surprising discovery was how much money I actually had when I wasn't supporting 3 people. Even after rent and my own expenses, I had surplus income each month. I opened a proper emergency fund. I increased my retirement contributions. I made extra student loan payments. For the first time in my adult life, I was financially moving forward instead of treading water. 1 month after leaving, I celebrated with Megan and 2 other close friends. We went to a nice restaurant, the kind I'd previously considered too expensive, and I paid for everyone's dinner without financial anxiety. To Brooke, Megan toasted, raising her glass, who finally realized her worth and acted accordingly. As we clinked glasses, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. The electricity is being shut off tomorrow. Please help us. I put my phone away without responding and rejoined the celebration. Their emergency was no longer my emergency. By the 2nd month, the consequences of financial independence had fully materialized for my parents. Through occasional updates from extended family, I learned that the electricity had indeed been shut off for 3 days before Mom arranged a payment plan. Dad's car payment had been missed twice, triggering repossession warnings. The mortgage was now 45 days delinquent, with the bank sending formal notices. They had begun borrowing money from extended family members, creating new tensions. I maintained my distance, focusing on settling into my new apartment and building a healthier life. I'd switched my phone number after the first month when the calls and texts became overwhelming. Only Megan and a few trusted others had my new contact information. Then one Tuesday afternoon, My office reception called. Brooke, there's a Robert Mitchell here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but insists it's urgent. My heart raced. Tell him I'm in a meeting and unavailable. Too late. Dad had already pushed past reception and was storming toward my office, his face flushed with anger. Colleagues looked up in alarm as he shouted my name. Brooke, you can't hide from your responsibilities. I stepped out of my office, closing the door behind me to contain the scene. Dad, this is my workplace. You need to leave. Not until you explain yourself. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Your mother is working double shifts. Is this what you wanted? Security arrived, summoned by our receptionist. Sir, you need to leave now. Dad's face contorted with rage. You called security on your own father? After everything we've done for you? The irony of his statement hung in the air as two security guards escorted him out. My boss, Heather, approached cautiously. Brooke, take the rest of the day. And just so you know, we can get a restraining order if needed. This is completely unacceptable. I nodded gratefully, shaking with adrenaline and embarrassment. The support from my workplace was unexpected and touching. 3 days later, Mom showed up at my apartment. I still don't know how she found my address, probably through a mutual acquaintance. I answered the door without recognizing her at first. She looked 10 years older, her hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. Brooke, she whispered, tears immediately flowing. Please, can we talk? Against my better judgment, I let her in. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. How could you do this to us? She began, her tone both accusing and pleading. We're your parents. Mom. Dad told me to get out of his house, the house I was paying for. What did you expect me to do? He didn't mean it. You know how he gets when he's upset. That's the problem, Mom. He's been getting that way for years, and you've been enabling it. You both expected me to sacrifice my entire future indefinitely. She shook her head vigorously. That's not true. We just needed help temporarily. 5 years isn't temporary, Mom. And nothing was changing. Dad refused to look for work. You wouldn't increase your hours. Neither of you would consider downsizing. But to cut us off completely? Without warning? The electricity was shut off, Brooke. I left a detailed letter explaining exactly what bills would stop and when. You had time to make arrangements. These are consequences of your choices, not mine. The conversation circled repeatedly. Mom alternated between guilt trips, minimizing Dad's behavior, and tearful pleas. I remained calm but firm. I wouldn't resume financial support under any circumstances. Finally, she asked the question I'd been expecting. So what now? Are you just done with us forever? I'm done with the old relationship dynamic, I clarified. I'm open to building a new, healthier relationship eventually, but only with clear boundaries and mutual respect. She left looking defeated, unable to imagine a relationship that wasn't based on financial dependence. A week later, Uncle James called to invite me to a family meeting at his house. Everyone's concerned, Brooke. We need to address this situation as a family. I hesitated, suspecting an ambush, but Aunt Patricia got on the line. I promise this isn't a trick to pressure you. James and I believe your parents need to hear some hard truths from all of us. Against my therapist's advice, I agreed. The gathering was small, my parents, Uncle James and Aunt Patricia, and me. The tension was palpable as we sat in their living room, no one quite meeting anyone else's eyes. Uncle James began diplomatically. We're here because we care about all of you and want to help resolve the situation. Dad immediately scoffed. There's nothing to resolve. My daughter has abandoned her family obligations. End of story. Robert, Aunt Patricia said sharply, that attitude is exactly why we're in this situation. Brooke, would you please share your perspective? Calmly, I laid out the facts. 3 years of paying all household expenses totaling nearly $130,000, Dad's refusal to seek employment, their unwillingness to reduce expenses, Dad's Christmas outburst. and my decision to stop enabling destructive patterns. As I spoke, I placed copies of bank statements on the coffee table, hard evidence of every payment I'd made. Uncle James examined them, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Robert, is this accurate? Brooke was paying the mortgage? The car loans? Everything." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "She's exaggerating. We were going through a rough patch, and she helped out temporarily. For 3 years. Aunt Patricia asked incredulously. "That's not temporary, Robert." Mom started crying quietly. We didn't realize how much it was adding up to. "It just happened gradually." "Nothing just happens for 3 years," I said. These were choices. Daily choices to let your 27-year-old daughter sacrifice her future rather than facing reality. The conversation grew heated. Dad eventually stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Mom looked torn between following him and continuing the conversation. "Diane," Uncle James said gently, "you need to decide if you're going to keep enabling Robert's behavior or face reality." "What am I supposed to do?" she asked desperately. "Leave him." "That's your decision," I said. "But I won't keep financing his choices, and you shouldn't either." After the meeting, several relatives reached out privately. "Cousin Mark, I had no idea you were carrying the whole family. That's messed up. Aunt Catherine, I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner." Even Uncle James's college-age son sent a simple text, "Mad respect for standing up for yourself, cuz." Meanwhile, subtle changes began at my parents' house. Dad reluctantly took a retail job he'd previously deemed beneath him. Mom increased to full-time hours at the school. They began selling possessions, Dad's golf clubs, Mom's china collection. They made arrangements with the mortgage company to avoid immediate foreclosure. These developments came to me through family updates, not direct communication. I maintained my distance, focusing on therapy and rebuilding my life. Each week brought new insights about the unhealthy dynamics I'd escaped and the healthy boundaries I was establishing. The most unexpected development came 6 weeks after the family meeting. My therapist had helped me see that my newfound freedom wasn't just financial, it was emotional. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for managing my parents' feelings and financial survival. The relief was profound, almost physical. My career flourished in this new emotional space. When my company announced a prestigious project lead position, I applied without hesitation, something I wouldn't have done before, knowing it would require occasional travel and longer hours. To my delight, I got the promotion, along with another salary increase. As I celebrated this achievement with friends, I realized something profound. The crisis that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. 6 months after that fateful Christmas dinner, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. My apartment, though small, felt like a sanctuary, every item in it chosen by me, every bill manageable and mine alone. My emergency fund had reached 3 months of expenses. My retirement account was growing steadily. I'd even started researching first-time home buyer programs, something that would have been unthinkable during my years of supporting my parents. Through family updates, I learned that my parents' financial situation had fundamentally changed. The consequences I'd feared might destroy them had instead forced necessary adaptations. Dad maintained his retail job at Home Depot, working up to assistant manager position through what Uncle James described as reluctant but consistent effort. The job paid significantly less than his former career, but it provided stability and health insurance. Mom had transitioned to full-time teaching with summer school commitments, nearly doubling her previous income. She seemed, according to Aunt Patricia, tired but purposeful in a way she hasn't been for years. They downsized dramatically, selling the 4-bedroom house I'd been paying for and moving to a 2-bedroom rental apartment. The foreclosure had been avoided through a short sale, damaging their credit but preventing worse financial consequences. Most of their luxury items, the second car, Dad's extensive golf equipment, The high-end electronics had been sold to pay accumulated debts. Their lifestyle now matched their actual income rather than the artificial standard maintained through my contributions. 3 months after I left, during a particularly difficult financial period for them, Dad had apparently raged to Uncle James that I was punishing them out of spite. Uncle James had responded bluntly, "No, Robert. She's allowing you to experience the natural consequences of your choices. There's a difference." The most significant development came in the form of a handwritten letter from Mom, delivered to my office rather than my home address. "Dear Brooke, this is the hardest letter I've ever written. For months, I've been angry and hurt by your decision to cut financial ties so abruptly. I've blamed you for our hardships, for the humiliation of downsizing, for the struggle to rebuild our lives. But recently, during a therapy session James and Patricia arranged for me, I had a painful realization. What you did wasn't cruel, it was necessary. For years, I enabled your father's refusal to adapt after his job loss. Worse, I enabled the terrible way we treated you, accepting your financial support while failing to acknowledge your sacrifices. I won't burden you with details of our current situation. Suffice to say, we're managing, not comfortably, but adequately. Your father is working steadily. I'm teaching full-time. We're living within our actual means for the first time in years. I don't expect forgiveness or resumed financial support. I'm writing simply to acknowledge the truth. You did what you needed to do for your own well-being, and you had every right to do it. I'm deeply sorry for failing to protect you from your father's behavior and for my own part in taking advantage of your generosity. If you're ever open to rebuilding a relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence, I would welcome that opportunity. But I understand if that's not possible. With love and regret, Mom." The letter shook me deeply. After sharing it with my therapist, I decided to respond cautiously, suggesting coffee at a neutral location. Our first meeting was awkward, filled with long silences and careful navigation around painful topics. But it was a beginning. Over the following months, we established a new, limited relationship. We met every few weeks for brief, public interactions. I set clear boundaries. No discussion of their finances, no requests for help, no pressure to reconnect with Dad, who remained unwilling to acknowledge his role in what had happened. The relationship with Mom was different now, more distant, but paradoxically more honest. We spoke as adults with separate lives rather than as financial dependents and provider. Sometimes I glimpsed the mother I remembered from childhood, before Dad's job loss, before the entitlement and manipulation. Other times, old patterns would emerge, and I'd need to firmly redirect the conversation. Dad remained estranged by his choice. According to Mom, he still maintained I had abandoned them when they needed me most. His narrative omitted the years of support, the Christmas ultimatum, his refusal to seek work. While this saddened me, therapy helped me accept that I couldn't control his perspective, only my response to it. Extended family relationships actually improved after the separation. Without the constant anxiety about my parents' situation, I could engage more authentically with relatives. Thanksgiving at Uncle James and Aunt Patricia's home was surprisingly pleasant. Even with Mom attending alone, Christmas I spent with friends, creating new traditions unburdened by painful associations. Financially, the difference in my life was dramatic. With my income serving one person instead of 3, I could finally build security. By the 1-year mark after leaving, I had a 6-month emergency fund, regular retirement contributions, a growing down payment fund, 0 credit card debt, a plan to eliminate student loans within 5 years. Beyond finances, I experienced profound personal growth. Therapy helped me recognize and dismantle codependent patterns, not just with family, but in friendships and dating relationships. I developed healthier boundaries in all areas of life. I learned to distinguish between generosity and enabling, between appropriate guilt and emotional manipulation. I began volunteering with a financial literacy program for young adults aging out of foster care, using my hard-won knowledge to help others avoid similar pitfalls. This work brought unexpected healing, transforming my painful experience into something constructive. Perhaps most significantly, I developed confidence in my own judgment. After years of gaslighting, being told my concerns were overreactions, my boundaries were selfish, my needs were secondary, I finally trusted my perceptions and honored my intuition. The first holiday season apart was challenging but liberating. I declined Mom's tentative invitation to Christmas dinner, choosing instead a ski trip with friends. We exchanged modest gifts by mail, significant progress from the previous year, but still maintaining necessary distance. Looking back now, I understand that what happened wasn't just about money. The financial entanglement was a symptom of deeper dysfunction, a family system built on martyrdom, enablement, and avoidance. Breaking the financial ties was necessary to break these destructive patterns. The lessons I've learned through this painful journey are ones I carry forward into every relationship. Financial independence is not just about money, it's about freedom to make authentic choices. Helping others is beautiful. Enabling destructive patterns is harmful to everyone involved. Healthy relationships involve reciprocity and respect, not one-sided sacrifice. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is allow natural consequences to occur. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary for genuine connection. Healing rarely follows the timeline we wish it would. Am I still sad about how things unfolded? Of course. I lost the idealized version of family I desperately tried to preserve through financial sacrifice. But I gained something more valuable, a life of authenticity, financial security, and genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than dependency. If you're in a similar situation, supporting family members who've become entitled to your assistance, sacrificing your future for others who refuse to change, please know that establishing boundaries isn't selfish. It's often the most loving choice for everyone involved, even when it doesn't feel that way. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision for your own well-being that others didn't understand? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most necessary healing. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember that your financial and emotional health matters too.